We always talk about all this cool malware that we have, like rootkits, and we go over the overview of all these cool frameworks that kind of tells you basically sort of what we do-ish, but it doesn't really tell you exactly what we do. And while like rootkits are fun, I don't really like to use them because it kind of takes the fun out of everything. So this talk is everything that we do that isn't rootkits, that's just things on your machine, and how personally I do all my access and control and all my stuff on your box, and how most of the team does it. And then if we really, really need to, then we use a rootkit.
Yeah, you'd get real sad if we got kicked out, though.
I would get sad, but I like to get back in. That's not my fault, or that's my fault. That's my problem, not my malware's problem. So, how many of you were blue teaming CCDC while we were hitting you pretty hard? Yeah? Okay, we didn't use the rootkit once. We did this stuff. So we're going to tell you what we did, and we're going to tell you how we did it, and you'll see exactly what the problems are with you guys. And I know it sounds like we're being mean, but really, like, this is how you really learn, and we're going to kind of show you some of the learning points from it. This is how I learned basically everything that I know. I did blue teaming for a solid, like, 2.5 years before I really got on Red Team and got into it, and you learn so much from it. So, like, I know it's like, oh, Red Team's being mean, yes, but you're going to learn a ton, and that's kind of why we do this.
Some would say it's a real trial by fire. Ha! Ha! I'm Jack. I just talked to you guys about rootkit. I need that. Sorry. I just talked to you guys about rootkits. I also do a lot of the like simple, stupid interaction things. So like, I don't think I've done this to any of you, but I say no is mine, or one of mine, and it's just really annoying. It's great. Yeah.
I'm Micah. I like to do all userland stuff. So I like to put things on your box that you can find and then use them against you. And I like to turn your services into my services.
So what is malware?
Malware. Malware.
Malware? It's all about access. We want to be in your box. And we don't really, want you to kick us out. We want access. We're going to tell you about how we do shells, callbacks, passive persistence, backdoors, and what you can do to fix it. Kind of.
Sort of. We're telling you what we're doing because we want you to stop it. You guys don't find some of the stuff that we think is pretty trivial, so we're telling you about it. And then make our jobs harder. Make us have a little more of a challenge. And check your stuff because it's all there. All of this stuff is in the logs, on your disk. None of it's hidden. It's all right in front of your face. Just got to find it. And don't piss off Jack.
Yeah, don't piss off Red Team. Is JC in here real quick? All right, cool. Here, I'll put my head on too, bud.
Oh my god, it's so cute. I'm sorry.
So JC was sitting there banning my IP as I was trying to Red Team him, and he doesn't have IP tables anymore. Shells and callbacks. Let's go.
Go. This is my
command and control. This is my slide.
That's yours.
Yeah,
Mine's
get out of
my
here.
slide.
So if we have an implant that we're communicating with, we have to have some way to talk to it. We can't just like magically do it. We have to, there's some bits going over some wire that's telling it what to do. So you got to figure out what that is, shut it down. JC did a good job. Well, kind of. He sat there, he saw that I was logging in via SSH, he banned my IP. That was a good remediation. I would have liked it if he figured out why I was able to SSH in and stop it, but we're getting there. Yep, that's you.
These are me. So I have this entire beacon framework called Joyful Noise. Some of you may have seen it or seen the results of it. Basically, when the pwn board's red, it says Joyful Noise. That's your boy right here. Basically, there's two things I do. I can either manually curl and pipe into bash, or I can make system files or service files that automatically curl and pipe into bash. And that is the entire beacon framework. So like there's never processes running on your system except for curl in that split second it's making the web connection. The entire rest of the time, it's just your system waiting or sleeping or doing anything. So I really like it because it's sneaky and you don't see processes running, but these are reverse connections. So that's, yeah, we'll get into that later, kind of the difference between reverse connections and bind connections. But I like to do everything through like reverse connections. And then, yeah, that's our kind of our framework. So it's really simple. Like you said, we're going over protocols. We're going over web. We go over SSH. We go over mail. I don't know. What else do people go over?
HTTP, TCP. Watch them.
Watch them.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're not sending you malicious mail. Well,
Uh,
we're not always sending you malicious mail.
We do
It's
like
not
to send
gonna be
malicious mail.
the docx exploit or anything. We're just SSHing in. Find shells for Redteam. Oh, thanks, Micah. So here is a pretty accurate description of what's happening. This is us sending, beaming, laser beaming packets at you. So you gotta block them. This is where like the wall comes in. You gotta put your wall up so we can't beam in. You need a laser-proof wall. The most effective way, like I just said, SSH. That's how we get in almost all the time. We like SSH because it has tab complete, and we don't always know every command we're gonna run.
You can do up
SSH.
arrow. It's really nice.
Oh, I love it. Control R.
Dude, it tells you what directory you're in. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
We like SSH. So if your SSH is down, we want to bring it back up. That's like our #1 goal is like restart SSH.
Oh yes, I have gotten back into boxes to help them score on SSH again because I don't like using Netcat.
But Netcat's still there. Don't get us wrong. We don't not use Netcat. We just use Netcat after SSH. So check them both.
Yep. So after we're getting kicked out of SSH or your service stops, we go to Netcat and we just start beaming packets at you. After that, it's the services, backdooring services and other things like that.
So I actually want to talk on this for a sec. So people always say like, oh, red versus blue competitions aren't necessarily realistic. Backdooring services, very realistic. How many of you have heard of a web shell? Yeah? Pretty common in the real world. That's a service backdoor, right? If we have ways to get through your service that you have to keep up and score, we want to use that. If your mail server is just accepting shell commands and running them, I like to use that too. Like, your services are now our services. But this is very valid, and it makes you read your config files, which is one of the things we're going to come back to later. But, like, this is something you need to be doing because you're here to learn. You're here to figure out how your service is working. Read your config files. That's probably how we're doing it.
Passive persistence. So this is everything that we've dropped beforehand that's like, this is how we get back in once you've killed something. Things that run code.
My favorite. I love running code. And I like it when I manually don't have to run the code. How many of you check your Vim RC? Yeah. How many of you check it every single time you run Vim? I don't believe you.
Fake news.
Even if you check your Vim RC, how many times you check your screen RC? Okay. Yeah. Did you know you can execute commands through all of these every time you open up Vim or screen or tmux or bash or SSH or literally anything that has an SH file, which is pretty much everything? I like to use those. I personally never check my Vim RC unless I don't see the little numbers on the side and my colors are off. If my colors are right and my numbers are there, I'm not looking at my Vim RC file. But that was one of the things we used at CCDZ. I had a beacon callback. Every time you run Vim, comes up to Micah. Micah sends you more commands to run. But like, check your stuff because it automatically is running and just kind of know like the system. And a great way to stop these is chatter them. Because chattering, who knows about chatter? Yeah? So you can do ch adder, which is check adder? Change adder.
Attribute.
Plus I to mark it as immutable, which means you can't change it. So even if you're root, you can't like echo into the file or you can't Vim it. You have to unmake it immutable, change it, and then re-add it. So like, just do stuff like that because that'll probably break our scripts that are automatically deploying all this stuff. But there is ways around this, so just kind of know like, hey, what's going to run when I type in this command? And then when I type in this command and the stuff runs, how do I stop it from running next time?
Yo, cron tab though, it's pretty great. That, honestly, if you leave your laptop open in front of me, that's what I'm going to do to you.
Yeah.
I'm going to cron tab -E and make it, if you are on a Mac, it's going to talk. Where's Scott Brink at? Oh, he's out. Never mind. Auto starting things. So, you know, some of you, if you ever played with like Raspberry Pi, you've probably looked into like, how do I auto start things? That's at least how I got into like the auto starty things. Like rc.local, 10 out of 10. Initd and service files also work. That's just every time you start up or every time you log in, it executes. Environment variables, there's different environment variables and they have special meanings. People don't usually know about them because they're like, oh, whatever, it's environment variables. But like, oh,
They do more than just
some of
make
them
your
do
prompt look pretty.
a lot.
Who knows what prompt command is? Yeah? It runs a command every time you press enter. Maybe iptables-f, maybe a callback. Who knows? That's for you to find out.
Now, why are we doing this? To be mean,
Yeah,
honestly.
these ones are just kind of to be mean and to keep getting beacons back. Because
Yep.
if you find one beacon, I want more beacons. So
We'll do it to flush your tables. We'll do it to restore certain configurations, re-add users, stuff like that. Backdoors.
is your service running? You should probably go catch it. No, like should your service be running? This is the biggest thing. So like, we always talk about having SSH open, right? So like on your client box, I'm gonna start SSH. Do you need SSH on a client box? You have console. No, you don't. Turn it off, right? Or like DH client. You might see like 12 DH client processes. So you go to Google and you're like, huh, what's DH client? Oh, DH client handles the DHCP on Linux. Are you using DHCP? Probably not. Is there 12 of them for a reason? Probably not. Just because it's there and it might look legit or maybe even is legit doesn't mean it needs to be running. We're going to try and use everything on your system against you, including the things that are real. So check for that. Go over the port.
Is your service running how it should be? Super important. Make sure it's using the right config. If it's using a different config, what's in that config? Are we just allowing everyone to log into your SSH? Well, I don't know. You should check. Checking if it's been modified. This is where logging comes in, guys. Is our boy Ben Bornholm in the house? There he is. Ben is a fantastic resource if you want to start looking into this. He knows a lot about it. Or you can go to Guardians where he teaches about it every week. But checking if your service files have been modified is super important. You can do things like shatter to make sure that they have to unshatter it to do it. Otherwise, on Linux, Audit D, my favorite tool, does syscall monitoring, and you can monitor when things are written to. So like, just set all of the important config files, your SSH config, your ham configs, bash RC, all of those. Set them to be logged. And then you have a little log, and you just tail it. And as soon as you see someone do something to it, it shows you their current working directory, so where they are in the file system, the program they're using, and their process ID. And you just go, PS, correct, that ID. You find its tree, and you see how they're getting in. Super awesome. Blue Team tools. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can handle this. So how many of you guys have like ls/bin and /user bin before? And then you've looked through all those files, and you've been like, huh, a lot of these are just bash scripts or Python scripts. They're not even all binaries. So when we're like, oh, backdoor the binary, sometimes it's really easy. Sometimes I can use Vim. Yeah, literally just Vim and add a command at the bottom of your script. Or maybe things that you know are binaries, like sh, are magically shell scripts. That could be spooky. Or who's a fun one, because who shows who's logged into the system. So what if I just in who, I call the real who, but grep out all of Redteam's IP addresses. Yeah? See, this is the kind of stuff we like to do. So like just make sure what you're calling is actually what you're calling. Like reinstalling will do this, but there's just like a lot of things that are just shell scripts on your system that you don't even realize that can just kind of be tweaked.
Also, aliases are wonderful for this. Alias is like if we were to do this like little shim thing on your binary, we just do it in like memory, in environment variable kind of things. Authentication.
Ooh, solid.
You should check if your password is actually meaningful. So instead of just typing in the same password and knowing that you typed it right, try getting it wrong.
Yeah.
If you log in with the wrong password, something is very wrong. You need to fix it.
Also, this is another really good one. If you go and you turn off root login in your SSH config, try logging in as root in SSH. Because just because the config is doing that, it might be loaded from somewhere else. Maybe SSH is not even reading that file. But like check your settings that you do, because a lot of times we just set settings and we never go back to verify that those settings have actually been changed.
Yes. Always trust but verify. Actually, don't even trust. Just verify.
Just verify, yeah.
Yeah.
No trust.
Don't trust anything. Verify everything. Check your sudoers. Make sure that there aren't extra users in there, and also make sure that appropriate password authentication is enforced. Also, sudoers lets you control what program specifically you can execute. So instead of just doing all, you can specify like, oh yes, this user is only going to run this command and nothing else.
For the love of God, if you see your PAM files calling bin bash, that's not legitimate. I promise you. There's some sneaky things you can do with the PAM files. So just read up on how Linux authentication works, because there's a lot of different systems at play, and there's a lot of different places you can throw in like hooks. There's like the PAM files, there's the system login, there's like the database files it's reading from. There's a lot of different ways where the authentication is going. So kind of be familiar with like, how is my authentication actually being handled, right? And then look through there.
So here are a couple temporary solutions to the things we've talked about here today. Oh, I got this first one.
You got the first one.
Oh. Keep your team's morale high. This is super important, guys, because if your team hates what they're doing, they won't do it well and they'll just leave. Yeah. 10 out of 10, if it's a nice day out, I would rather be outside than getting hammered by Redteam. Like, honestly. Keep it fun. Sing along. Get some T-Swizzle going. Redteam will love it.
Honestly, it's a lot of state of mind too. Like, it sucks. I've been a blue team. I've been hammered before. I remember one time when I went to UB, I was like so sad at the end, and we're all just like sitting there like really depressed. And we're just like, man, we just got destroyed by Kyle and Brandon. And then we won. And we're like, oh, that came out of the nowhere. But like, just keep the state of mind up, because like what I learned from that afterwards is I learned a ton, right? I was like learning I learned new things about mail and how to keep those services running. I learned new web things. Like I learned about PF Sense a little bit. You're learning as you go. So just keep that in mind. Like you're not there to lock out Redteam. You're trying, but you're not there to do that, and you're not going to do that. So just keep that kind of the perspective as you go through that. So morale's very important. A lot of other good things on this. Read your logs. If there's a service starting every single second, okay, how many people, I know at CCDC some people do this. You would go and you would SSH, you'd vim your SSH config, you'd change your settings, and you'd hit write quit, and it would say the file's been updated on the system. So anyone seen that before? Yeah. That's because there's a service running every single second that just copies a file into your SSHD config, right? Every single second. That's a lot of noise. Read your logs. If you would have typed journal CTL, it would have been like, huh, why is SSHD autoconfigure running every second with a copy command? There you go. Check your logs. We don't really hide the logs. Like, we're not here to make it impossible for you. We're here to guide you into the directions we want you to go. So we don't really tamper with log files. And I try and keep your firewalls up for the most part, unless I really need it. But like, so we're trying to like let you do this. So like your log files are not altered in any way. They're probably real, and there's a lot of stuff going on in your box. It's going to tell you what's going on in your box. So log files are very important. And then configuration files. When you just see like random things, like I said in your PAM files, if you see your PAM files calling bin bash, probably not good. What if you see your mail file calling bin bash? Also probably not good. Or bin callbacks. Like, what is mailbox command? It runs every time you get an email. How many different services have just things that run every time they're started, or every time like an event happens? Every time you log in, this thing happens. There's oftentimes they have setting configurations for that. Like, oh, every time a user logs in, just run this bash script, which has maybe legitimate purposes, questionably legitimate purposes, but for us, it's definitely not legitimate purposes. So read your configuration files.
Mine have legitimate purposes to get back in.
Yeah, obviously.
Defending against reverse shells. So the reverse shell is your box calling out to us asking what to do. Stop this. You have to prevent your box from going out places. So it sucks, but firewalling off all outbound traffic is not the worst idea. You just need to make sure that if you're on a client box, you can SSH into things. If you have a scored service on that box, that scored service can get back out. That's the most important thing is make sure you're scoring. Second most important thing is kick Redteam out. But with the reverse shell, you're blocking outbound traffic. So what this looks like a lot of times is you're just blocking all outbound traffic with a destination of 80.443, things like that. Sucks when you don't have like the internet to look things up. Sucks even more if Redteam's getting in.
Joe?
Something even better than just like the first firewall. Most competitions, you're going to get an actual network device.
You're getting ahead of us, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Okay, go ahead.
Drop it to God.
I apologize.
But
So there's reverse
hold on,
shells.
Go back to this real quick. Yeah, a lot of people think of firewalls like to stop the Nmap scan, but that's only input. Like if you see, only port 22 is running, that's only your ingress firewalls. Get your egress. Not many people think about what's going out. Like, oh, you can hit Google. Well, you can also hit misconfiguration.party. That's a fun one. What's up, Brain? That is very true. More time to set up, but definitely legitimate. Connection tracking. Oh wait, you're just talking about like established.
Are you talking about like the IP table rules, established and related things? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You can do established and related to make sure that the only things going out are connections that have already been initiated rather than new connections being allowed out.
Yep.
Yeah, you should do that for all your scored services. Bind shells?
Yeah, and then ingress. So then this is like the classic firewall that everyone thinks of as like stopping things coming in. Like this will stop bind shells. So even if SSH is running, but you're blocking port 22, we're not going to be able to use it. So check that. Also, bind shells are running processes because something needs to be sitting there. Whereas like all our callback beacons, like my entire callback beacon framework is things that are not running processes specifically, so there's no evidence of that. Bind shells need processes. Netstat shows you this. And LSOF. Who here has never heard of LSOF before? Rain, I know you have. Okay, LSOF stands for List Open Files. And let me give you a little tip about Linux. Hey, Jack, what's a file on Linux?
What isn't a file on Linux, Micah?
There you go. Everything is a file. If I have port 80 open, it's actually represented as a file. If I have processes, they're represented as files in /proc. They're not maybe physically files, but they're represented as files. And listing open files, LSOF, shows you everything. You can be like, oh, here's RAL sockets, here's TCP sockets, UDP sockets, processes, everything. LSOF is one of the most powerful tools you can ever do. And yeah,
I'm gonna go off a little bit here on LSOF. Fantastic. Not only does it show you the open files, it shows you what's using them. So if you do LSOF, it'll just dump everything. You can do -P, look at the files a specific process is using. If you find you can grep for a specific file and find the PID that's opening it. You can also specify specifically network files. So all sockets are files. So if you're trying to get a list of every network connection, LSOF-I will show you all of them. Everything.
We're not trying to do things that you can't find. We're trying to do things that you can find. And these are some ways to find them.
Let's talk a little bit about routers here. Thank you, Joe Graham. They're hard to deal with, especially as a red team, because like we might own all of your Linux boxes, but we may not own your router. So if you can lock down your router and do ACLs at the router instead of on the host, we can't do anything. Like we might have IP table droppers on your Linux hosts, or if we don't have it on the router, we're screwed.
Oftentimes too, like there's certain routers, like Juniper, I think. Is it Juniper that doesn't run anything except for signed binaries? Yeah. So if we don't have Juniper's signing key, which we don't, we can't put binaries on Juniper. So that makes it really, really difficult for us, which means it's very, very powerful for the blue teams. All your traffic goes through it. So does all of ours. You can see what ports we're hitting, what protocols, what IPs. So make sure you're stopping things at the router level because that'll just stop a lot of traffic that's unnecessary. Joe.
Red team do anything to your routers though?
We can, but it depends on the router and it depends on who's on red team. I don't do routers.
So should I change my password to my router at probably minute 1?
Yes,
No.
you should change the
No,
password.
no, shh,
No?
no, don't tell him that.
Oh, my bad.
Yes, you should. Change your router passwords. Change all your passwords. If you haven't changed your passwords, you're doing something wrong because usually we try
Let
and
me say,
instant deploy with the
30
password.
minutes in, your passwords all need to be changed. If they are not, this will be a big problem. All of your passwords need to be changed.
And if you can't change it, I don't know why they wouldn't be able to change it, but magically, if your passwords aren't changing, there's probably something wrong. You should look into that too.
Accurate.
All right. Again, this is not magic. We don't know everything about the system. You're like, hey, how did you find all these random things? I read the man pages. That's what I do at night. I'm a very fun guy.
Wow, you know a good time.
That's a party. So yeah, it's not magic. It's all there. It's all really heavily documented. You can Google all of this stuff. Just find more obscure tricks than our obscure tricks and outsmart us. And then just learn about what you're using. Learn about the logs. The logs will tell you. The logs. We keep coming back to this.
Logs are great.
It's almost like they're important. Yeah. Like read the logs. Know what is happening on the system that you're using. Like it'll tell you everything. So we're not being like super sneaky. We'd be a little bit stealthy, but we leave a lot of evidence for you guys to find what we're doing. So just find it. We can't force you to read the logs. Maybe we should start catting logs for them.
That's That's our next thing.
and-
We're gonna just, instead of
Yeah.
having a shell, I'm just gonna drop them in like a tail of their log.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. So,
You're welcome.
yeah, there you go. And then also, this is one point we kind of skipped over. This,
Whoops.
put up a firewall. Keep putting up the firewall. If you put up the firewall once, in 15 minutes, the odds that that firewall are the same thing you put up or even existent are slim to none. So keep putting it up and check your file, because we like to change. I love finding firewall files in Tilda, because then it's just like, oh, hey, here's firewall.sh. And then I just vim in and change it up. And then when you rerun it, you did whatever I wanted you to do. So just keep updating it, keep putting it up, and just like keep checking that stuff.
My favorite experience with that was at CCDC not tryouts, where we had an IP table script, and I went back and I looked at it before I ran it, and what it did is it just blocked port 22, and then, yeah, just blocked port 22, which is how I had to access it. So I was like, good thing I didn't run that, because I would not be able to get back into this box.
Yeah. We like to find.
Rain.
Going off what I was saying earlier, unlike host-based firewalls, devices like Palo Alto, for instance, can do what Micah was referring to when you're looking at what kind of protocols are going on.
So Rain's point is that actual firewalls and routers can do packet inspection and tell what protocols are going on, instead of just blocking ports.
And this is all like real world stuff. Like, sure, it might be fun to like find all these random backdoors on the system, but real world, it's all going to be firewalls. It's all going to be about knowing how to write good policy for keeping things from coming in and out, knowing what's happening on your network. And we like to make fun of SIMs, but they're there for a reason. They kind of tell you what's going on. So like the real world is firewalls are going to be probably the biggest thing, and then log files too. You're ingesting them with like Elk or Splunk or Graylog or something, and then alerting on that kind of stuff. So like logs and firewalls, we keep coming back to these, but because they're real, they're very effective, not only in this case, but also in the real world. So if you want to learn some like solid skills on how to analyze log files, you can impress actual employers with that, because they're going to be using that. Whereas like, I don't know, knowing random PAM backdoors.
I've never had anyone ask me about
Yeah,
bash RC.
I've never had to use a PAM backdoor in the real world. So, but logs, definitely. Firewalls, definitely. This stuff, and this is why we do it. It's for you to learn this stuff. So, learn it. Yeah. Any questions? I mean, it's not magic. We just kind of told you what we do. You want to know anything else about what we do? Have you ever had Red Team do something? You're like, how'd they do that? Anything?
Yeah, anyone?
Anyone? No? Anyone? Bueller?
All right.
Anyone?
Oh, hey, there's one.
Oh.
One time I couldn't type the 4 key anymore. It's like the number 4. I couldn't type it
Oh.
There's a couple options for that one.
I'll give it away. Or yeah, you drop it. The one, the big one. Etsy.
Oh, okay. So this is a Micah Martin discovery as far as I'm concerned, and this is what I Say No uses as well. It's the Etsy input RC. So in there's like little key combos. So like for I Say No, what I do is I say anytime they hit enter, replace that with 30 backspaces, I say no, return. So what happens is anytime you hit enter, it deletes whatever you typed, says I say no, and then hits enter.
Yeah.
And we do that for like a couple different things. So like if we just replace 4 with nothing, you can't type 4 anymore, or it'll just disappear. Vim and ed.
Yeah, I like to make Vim ed. So you type Vim, press enter, ed.
Yep.
It's a fun one. Another one I like to do is switch A and E. That's so annoying. So annoying. It makes me mad, because I'll log on to the system and I'm like, so aggravating. Okay, how many of you have been in like a netcat shell and you press the up arrow and it sends those weird escape characters? That's what that file does. It maps the weird escape characters into like actual usable things. So the Etsy input RC has like the mappings like up arrow and like control C and like all those weird things. So we just use it for not so weird things. That's weird.
Ours.
Yeah.
Giving away everything here, Micah.
Yeah, we're
I like it.
telling people. I like to be open. I mean, we have plenty of stuff.
Like the rootkit.
Like the rootkit. Yeah, we'll tell you. We'll give you the source code for the rootkit. Now, I have mixed feelings about the rootkit. The rootkit's really dirty.
Oh.
It is. It's cheating. You have no way to get it off your system, really.
We're Red Team. That's what we do.
I
We
know,
cheat.
but still. We have a lot of really dirty tricks. Like some of it's just like, that's stupid. I don't even know why Linux does this. Linux really shouldn't do this. There's a lot of those moments where I'm just like, why? Why is this supported? Yeah. Any other questions? Any other like questions? Red Team thoughts? Blue Team thoughts? We have Blue Team experience. If you want to be like, how do I be better Blue Team?
do we?
Go to CCDC practice. What's
I
up?
want to develop a rootkit for blue teamers.
Well,
Oh.
let me
It's
tell
Red Team
you,
rootkit.
about that. It's interesting. You can actually do it, and there are certain things you can do as a rootkit that are definitely beneficial, like renting other modules from being loaded. It's a great one. Feasibility-wise, it's not that meaningful to you. Like, you can implement additional access controls, but you might as well just learn SE Linux or AppArmor. A lot of the stuff's already built for you, so you're definitely better just like keeping root access to your box than dropping a kernel module. The idea of using a kernel module to remove a rootkit kernel module is interesting. However, you would have to, there's like a significant chance you just lose data out of your kernel, which is bad, because your kernel will stop working.
SE Linux and AppArmor have like direct hooks into the kernel for like reading file permissions and stuff. So it's essentially doing what the rootkit's trying to do, except it has it in like a really nice framework for you that allows you to write really, really well-defined policy and rules. So like use that kind of stuff. The biggest thing with that is knowing what your system needs to be doing legitimately. So it's like, oh, maybe you could just like block bin bash from everything. Or maybe you have like a Jenkins server and that requires bash because it needs to like run things and build things. So it's hard to do if you don't know exactly what's going to be running on your system. But if you know, like, I don't need the netcat command. Yeah, nuke the netcat command. There's not really a legitimate reason. There's no legitimate service that uses netcat, right? Nuke it. Get rid of everything that's like not needed. And this is kind of the big thing, is like stripping away everything. This is the way to make Linux actually good, is remove everything that's not needed, because there's a lot of unneeded stuff in there that we like to use. We're just using unneeded stuff, really.
Like, how many times do you need to rotate your screen?
Yeah, really. I don't know if you can disable that setting. Yeah. Like, you can, I don't even know if you can disable like bash RC. You can disable cron tab. That's a super good one. Disable cron tab. Like, if you're not using cron tab's good for like long-standing servers for like years, where maybe every third week it calls apt update to install your security updates. But over like a weekend competition, do you need cron? No. We need cron. We like cron. We don't need cron. We don't need anything. We have everything.
Well then, Micah.
Yeah. So like, we're trying to demystify Redteam. What's up? It has a lot of, we have a lot of really obscure tricks. Like tricks you're like, why? Like, there's just things like, so sure, Scott Court has removed systemd from Cucumber Linux. Valid, but it's using sysvinit, right? So that's, do you know what sysvinit is consistent of? Bash files. They're literally bash files in Etsy. So if sysvinit can run bash files in Etsy, why can't I run bash files in Etsy? Same logic. Like, there's a lot of things you can swap out things for other systems, but all these systems have ways of executing code. So yeah.
I like that question.
That was a good question, yeah. And we like, there is obscure things like pfSense runs on FreeBSD. So like, there's a lot of differences in FreeBSD, but FreeBSD also just has weird things. It's just like, why can you do this? Why is this even allowed? And then you just use those. So you just got to be familiar with the system.
We've gone well over our time at this point.
We have. We're well over our time.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you all for listening us, especially on this really long, short talk. I hope you guys all enjoy the rest of your night and your weekend.
Yeah.
If you're competing in CPTC, good luck. Kick some butt. If you have questions, come talk to us afterwards.
Thank you all for coming.